The compass needle didn't just spin. It hummed with a metallic vibration that shouldn't have existed. We are not talking about a lost ship in the middle of a war, or a crime scene staged in a basement. We are talking about the 1909 Argentine scientific expedition to the South Shetland Islands, a mission that supposedly never returned because the mountains themselves refused to let them go. The logbook found 2 years later in a cave, not on a ship, but a cave contained entries that stopped mid-sentence, leaving the ink to bleed into the parchment like a drying wound. Let's strip away the romanticism of exploration and look at the geometry of a nightmare. Antarctica in 1909 wasn't just cold. It was a white canvas where reality started to fray at the edges. Led by Captain Julian Ibarra, a man known for his rigid, almost obsessive adherence to maritime protocol, the team consisted of 6 geologists and 2 naval officers. They weren't there for gold. They were there for magnetic readings. They were there to map the invisible forces that govern our planet. On October 14th, the wireless telegraph at the Buenos Aires station received a final, garbled message. It wasn't a request for rescue. It was a list of names. Not the crew's names, but names of people who had been dead for centuries. Why would a seasoned naval officer transmit the names of deceased 17th century explorers while his ship sat anchored off a desolate, freezing shoreline? This is the core of the rot that sits at the center of this story. I have spent months analyzing the transcripts, and I can tell you that the signal wasn't sent from the ship. The frequency was too low, suggesting it originated from deep beneath the ice shelf. Think about that. Something was mimicking their transmitter from deep underground. The rescue party arrived 6 weeks later. They found the vessel, the Santa Maria, pristine. The galley fire was still set for a meal that would never be eaten. The tea was frozen in the cups, a layer of ice perfectly preserving the tea leaves. But there wasn't a single footprint on the deck, not even from the crew. It was as if the ship had been lowered into that harbor by a giant hand, placed with surgical precision, and then abandoned to the elements. They searched the nearby caves, hoping to find the men huddled for warmth. What they found instead changed the official report so drastically that the Argentine government buried the findings for over 70 years. They found the equipment, the expensive, heavy magnetic sensors arranged in a perfect circle, pointing upward toward the sky. Not toward the pole, toward the stars. And in the center of that circle, 6 pairs of heavy wool boots, still tied, still standing, but empty. No bodies, no blood, no struggle. Just the boots, standing upright on the permafrost, as if the men had simply evaporated, leaving their heavy gear behind to hold their place in this dimension. The psychological toll on the rescue party was immediate. 2 of the men died of inexplicable heart failure within a month of returning. Another went blind, claiming that he had seen a light beneath the ice that was so bright it turned his internal world to ash. People want to believe in ghosts. It makes the world seem smaller, more manageable. But this wasn't a haunting. This was a systematic deletion. Someone, or something, was cleaning the slate. When you look at the official maps from 1910, the area where the Santa Maria anchored is marked as unstable terrain. That's code. It's professional obfuscation, for we don't want anyone looking there. There is a pattern here that people miss because they are too busy looking for a shipwreck. They ignore the fact that the ship's log was filled with dates that didn't exist in our calendar. Days that fell outside the leap year cycles. Days that shouldn't have been. It is as if the expedition drifted not into a different geographical location, but into a different epoch. I have seen the photos from the recovery effort. The faces of the rescue crew look aged by decades, their eyes hollowed out by the sheer terror of what they found in that silent, frozen void. They didn't just find a missing ship. They found a hole in reality, and they spent the rest of their lives trying to convince themselves they were hallucinating. We like to think that history is linear, that the past is a solid foundation we stand upon. But the 1909 expedition proves that history is brittle. You can slip through the cracks if you aren't careful. And the most chilling part, one of the rescue team members kept a private diary. He wrote that on the night they arrived, they heard voices coming from the ice, not crying for help. They were reciting the coordinates of the very city the rescue team had left behind. They were being watched, measured, and calculated by something that knew exactly where they lived. If you ever find yourself looking at an old map of Antarctica, look for the blank spaces. Do not assume they are empty. They are full of the things that the world was too afraid to name. You might think you are safe in your own home, but we are all just standing on thin ice, waiting for the ground to shift.